This is Virginia's Continuous School Improvement Planning Toolkit webinar series, Module 3, Comprehensive School Improvement Planning, the CSIP.
So, our guiding questions for today is who must engage in the comprehensive school improvement planning process? And I'm just going to tell you this right now, every school is supposed to have a comprehensive school improvement plan, and we'll discuss that. And even from the worst schools to the best schools, the most challenged to the most successful, and everyone in between. We're going to talk about when to complete a CSIP, why create a plan using this model, and we're going to give you some examples. You don't have to use our models, but hopefully they will help you in your thought process. What are the elements of a successful school improvement plan? How do you draft a strong one? And where do you find additional resources? And from the perspective of our office, many of us, before we were with DOE, we were in schools where we worked with challenging schools, and we found that having a plan is the most effective way to move forward. In the old days of school improvement plan, you'd write the plan, it'd set on a shelf, and the only time you'd look at it would be at the end of the year. That never gets you anywhere. And so it has to be a living, breathing document and one that you're going to use. And we're going to talk about how that can happen and make good use of that. So this is an overview of Module 3, developing a comprehensive school improvement plan. And really want to emphasize that this is an overview. You may be interested in having a more developed presentation. We do have a 3-hour presentation that really digs even deeper into this information, but this overview will be quite useful. You know, and there's obviously some modules that came before this, the overview of the process, developing that comprehensive needs assessment, you know, what are your needs, that builds that improvement plan, and then leading into how do you monitor and implement, how do you know if it's working. And so we're focused on our Module 3 today. And this all is based around our VA CSIP model, the Plan, Do, Study, Act model. And we want you to focus on constructing a plan that identifies needs and priorities and essential actions. And so, and also if you notice in the diagram on your screen, it's these arrows, this circle, this continuous circle. You know, so when you have a plan, you don't just say, this is what we're going to do, we're not going to deviate. No, you're going to analyze the plan. You're going to look at the data as you implement. You're going to look at the data as you get results. You're going to bring in multiple sources of data, and you're going to determine if things are working, not working, you know, and you really look at those foundational questions. What are we trying to accomplish? How we know that a change is an improvement, and what changes can result in an improvement? And really focus in on that monitor piece, right? So a lot of times we're good at creating a plan, but then is it implemented with fidelity? Do we know we're doing it? Do we have data that connects to it, or are we not doing that? And really you have to kind of be honest with yourself professionally and really dig into those components. So it's that Plan, Do, Study, Act, that unending circle of continuous improvement. We also emphasize the state and federal accountability requirements. So all divisions or schools are required, as I said earlier, to create and monitor the implementation of a multi-year improvement plan. Really focus on that phrase, multi-year improvement plan. Sometimes we get disheartened as school leaders when we, you know, don't see a 30, 40% gain in SOL scores, for example, but that's pretty unrealistic, right? So really you want to think of incremental change. You want to think about a growth model. You want to think about moving forward and not being disheartened, but really focusing on those realistic goals that can be accomplished. And we'll talk more about that today. The multi-year improvement plan must be focused on improving student outcomes and ensuring access to a high quality education, and I would add for all. The multi-year improvement plan must be reviewed and monitored on an annual basis. And what we're going to talk about today, the best practices described in this presentation, not mandated. You know, the template we're going to show you for school improvement, you don't have to use. We really want to encourage you to think about it and consider the components. And it is in compliance with state and federal requirements. In this module, we'll seek to enhance and elevate the quality and effectiveness of your school improvement plan at both the school and the division level. Now, any school improvement plan that's going to have success is based on the CNA, or the Comprehensive Needs Assessment. And a comprehensive needs assessment is really digging into your data, not just looking at one set of SOL scores, not just looking at, one discipline report, but really digging into the root causes, right? And you have to get at that. You have to really process the root causes. So if you think about your school, and you might say, well, we have a discipline problem. There's too many students being suspended. Well, if you think about a root cause analysis and how you would do that, is it really a discipline issue, or is it a student engagement issue, right? What is the root cause? When you look at many schools have concerns about attendance, particularly after our pandemic year, and look at attendance rates. And when students aren't at school, we kind of want to dig deeper into why that's happening, that root cause. So is it an attendance issue, or is it a school culture and climate issue? So digging into the CNA, really figuring out what the causes are of the problem is the best way to resolve a problem. As we all know, if you don't know why something's happening, you are going to have a very small chance of really correcting it. And sometimes in our school improvement plans sometimes we develop a plan and then we find out, yeah, it's okay, but it really didn't get at that problem. And remember, there is no such thing as a perfect school improvement plan, because it's a living, breathing document where we're revisiting and revising and always trying to make better. And if you notice the CNA in our little chart here, not chart, but our little diagram, it's kind of off to the side because it's important. You should always be updating and reviewing that comprehensive needs assessment as it builds in to your improvement plan. So what are the outcomes of a school improvement plan? Well, these are the outcomes, and we'll emphasize all of this today. Identification of the necessary targeted work that needs to occur in order to improve student outcomes. And remember, there's a lot of things all of you do, whether you're division leadership, the school level, principal, all of you do so many things. But remember, we're targeting student outcomes, student achievement. You can't lose sight of that. That is really crucial. Tangible plan process that integrates data review and data analysis with research-based strategic planning. School improvement doesn't happen by accident. Sometimes we have a plan, we don't necessarily follow it, we see an improvement or decline in results. We really have to get at, are we implementing our plan? Are we doing it with fidelity? Are we collecting the data we need to be collecting? Those are all parts of that thought process. The CSIP provides guidance towards addressing all elements of federal, state, and local school improvement planning requirements in that single integrated format. And the other point too is, do you have a plan that someone else can understand? If you go to, let's say you get promoted, you move to another school, someone else comes in, can they pick up that plan and continue implementing it, or will they not know what's happening? And so that's something. We want to have these processes that are bigger than ourselves that continue the great work we set out to do. School improvement plan, it's streamlined, targeted by priorities, and serves as a meaningful tool for managing and tracking systems of improvement against measurable goals and intended outcomes. Data, always looking at data, always looking at data. Alignment of resources necessary for the successful implementation of school improvement strategies to the strategic goals and activities outlined in your plan. We all know we've had great plans. We haven't provided that professional development. We haven't provided the resource to the teachers. We haven't provided the resource to the family to make it successful. So that's really something to think about. In the school improvement plan, we have some essential components, such as SMART goals, essential actions that are aligned to priorities and needs, plan steps to implement the actions, a plan for professional development, a list of needed resources and supports, detailed timelines, and assignment of responsibility of implementation, and responsibility of monitoring. So I just want you to look at that first bullet for reflection and discussion. Which aspect of the CSIP do you find most important? So just look at that first bullet. Which aspect of the CSIP do you find most important of the ones you see on the screen? And go ahead and put that in the chat. So go ahead, put in the chat of those items you see on the screen, which do you find most important? Now remember, that's based on your point of view. There's no right or wrong answer to that, but you see those 7 items. Which one do you find most important? Go ahead and drop that in the chat. See a lot of people saying essential actions, professional development. At PD, there's essential actions, planning those steps. Planning those steps, the timeline. And guess what? All of you are right, because they're all critically important for what you do with the school improvement plan. But reflect on that and be thinking about, what is the most difficult to develop, and really get at the why. Why isn't it working? Just like when we talk or work with teachers, a lot of times they'll say a student isn't doing this or a student isn't doing that, but then really turn that to, well, what is the teacher doing to try to change the situation? What is in our locus of control to change and affect change? And that's really important, because we know that there are difficulties, there are challenges we have. We have to remember that we want to focus on what we can do to affect change. So there's a process for our comprehensive school improvement plan. Phase 1, we need to identify the priority areas of focus, and that's going to come out of our comprehensive needs assessment. We want to develop SMART goals. Where are we and where do we want to go? And that's based on that, identifying those focus areas based on our root causes. So then we get to phase 3. Okay, we have our SMART goal. We know what we want to achieve. What are we planning to do to meet that goal? Once we set that up, then we have to develop our detailed action steps. What are the specific steps of our essential action, and who is responsible? And what artifacts are we going to collect to know that this is working? And that ties into the final phase of implementation and monitoring, how we know if it's working. On the screen in front of you is a sample template of the comprehensive school improvement plan. And if you notice, we've highlighted the start of this, and it's kind of overwhelming on the screen to see that if you haven't worked with a comprehensive school improvement plan template before. You notice there's an area of focus, and that's based on that data from your comprehensive needs assessment. And so the first thing you want to do is to identify priority areas of focus. You want to review the data sources, strengths and challenges, and the executive summary from your comprehensive needs assessment to identify no more than 3 priority areas of focus. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, my school, there's like 10 things I know of that I want to work on or fix. I know that we've looked at, we know from the stakeholders, these are concerns, and there's 10 things at the division level that there's an interest to concerns or fix and work on. But remember, we want to focus on academic achievement, right? We want to focus on what we can do. And once you begin to expand out beyond more than 3 priority focus areas, what do you think is going to happen? Your chance of success diminishes, right? So when you can really, now it doesn't mean that those other things aren't important, and they are. But if you spread yourself too thin, or you can't focus your resources to where you need to be, then you are not going to achieve anything. And really, when we stay focused on student academic achievement, we focus on a few areas, we're going to be successful. And we're not going to put this in the chat right now, but if you notice, there's that reflection question, something to think about. How do you thoughtfully select your priorities to focus on given a high volume of needs? You really want to think about that, because it varies by context. It varies by your school, varies by the things your school has been through, but those decisions have to be made. How are you going to focus on that? What are you going to do? And how are you going to communicate that? Remember, as the instructional leader, as the leader of the division or a school, the teachers and students look to you for what are the priorities. And if you set those priorities and communicate the plan and include stakeholders in the plan, you're going to have a much better chance of success. So considerations from that comprehensive needs assessment. What opportunities for improvement and/or changes, areas of growth, are you considering based on your comprehensive needs assessment? And these questions are intended to help you to drill down to that priority area of focus. What has occurred at your school that should be replicated? And remember, we often, as educators, I think more than any other group, we tend to look at what aren't we doing, or what is the problem? How can we fix it? What can we work on? But a lot of times you need to look at what is going well, right? Look at the areas that are having strength. Give you an example. With a lot of the virtual learning, many people said virtual learning wasn't successful. But we all have many stories or examples where students succeeded in virtual learning. Well, why was that? And could that be taken and used in a different context, right? So examining those areas where you have strength and success, that's just one example. I'm just sharing that as an example. Sharing those strengths with other areas, other parts of the school, other parts of the school division. What have you learned as a result from your CNA process? How do you identify those challenge areas? And then what will be your priority areas of focus? Now, once you've selected your priority area of focus, then you want to determine your goal. Then you want to determine, okay, I know where I am. I know what I want to work on. Where do I want to get? And so that brings us to the development of a SMART goal. And many of us, almost all of us, I'm certain on this call, have worked with SMART goals before. Remember, the SMART goal is that specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and rigorous, and time-bound goal. And you want to be really specific. And also with your plan, you want to communicate the plan. And remember, it shouldn't just be the principal's plan, the superintendent's plan, the director of instruction's plan. It should be a plan of a team, a school improvement team, including many stakeholders. And you want to include people in your planning process. You want to include people in the implementation process, professionals, stakeholders, and you want to be able to communicate that with not just the school, but the public as well. So people know where you're headed. If you're clear about where you're headed, you're going to get there. You set out on a journey and you don't know where you're headed, you're probably not going to get there. So back to our template that we shared before, and we're going to be sharing the resources, slides, and so on in the next few days through an email to your Office of School Quality contacts. So you'll be getting some of these materials. So the SMART goal, as you can see on here, it's that outcome you want to reach related to student achievement. Right? Keep that in mind. Keep thinking about student achievement. There's so many other pieces as school and division leadership we get hung up on, but keep that student achievement piece in mind. So when we develop our SMART goals, the SMART goal helps school teams to work toward a common goal. And this is why, remember, don't put that improvement plan on the shelf. You want to keep going back to it and keep using it and referring to it. You want to keep that goal in front of everyone, that shared goal, shared vision, shared mission. If we all kind of part of that, we're on the team, we know what we're doing, we know why, how, then we're going to have a lot better chance of being successful. It's not a secret, right? Sometimes it's always curious why people kind of don't share these things. Why are you this roadmap of your success you're not sharing with others? So you want to do that. You want to share and you want to communicate. And the more people you communicate with, the better chance you have of success. The SMART goals help define exactly what the future state looks like and how it will be measured. And SMART goals show others how their work aligns and relates to the focus of the school. Some of the questions you should be considering when you write your SMART goal: what are the priority areas of focus? We're back to those root causes. Within each priority area of focus, what is our reality and what is the outcome we would like to see? How will school leadership, remember, this is your role. You're the instructional leader. Anyone on this Zoom today, you're an instructional leader. This is what you can do. How will you be able to support improvements within that priority area of focus? What is it that we want our students to learn and be able to do? Back to student achievement. What support will teachers need to support student learning? So how do we build up our teachers? How do we get them there? Remember, they need support too. What daily, weekly, and monthly actions and processes can be implemented to improve in our identified areas? And then in red, very important, what are the contributing factors and root causes from our needs assessment? And we never want to lose sight of those root causes. We never want to, be looking at the surface things, really want to get deep into it. When you write a SMART goal, always want to examine who's the target population, what will be measured, what's our data source, when will the data be reviewed? And when we think about data, always be thinking about multiple sources of data, particularly when you get to that root cause. You really want to draw in, as we call it, triangulating data. And triangulating doesn't just mean three, but it can mean multiple pieces of data, more than three, to really help get a full picture. What's the timeline? And what does the data currently show? And what are the expected outcomes? Now, for instance, here's an example of a SMART goal with an area of focus of academic achievement or gaps in reading. So the reality for this school, for this example, is reviewing our CNA executive summary, data on lesson plan delivery, and differentiated strategies and processes, and achievement gap data from the past 3 years. So you look at that, that's multiple sources of data, reveals that this percentage of English learner students are proficient in reading on the SOL assessment as compared to this percentage of non-EL students, and the teachers need some professional development on differentiation and high yield strategies. That's the reality. Then the SMART goal becomes, by October 2000, whatever, we will increase the percentage of English learner students passing the reading SOL assessment from where we are to where we want to go, the percentage, the other percentage. Now, some of you are like, well, what about math? Well, here you go. Here's a math example for you. So this reality, reviewing the CNA executive summary, attendance data, high yield strategies, processes, and impact data, and academic achievement data reveals that 20% of algebra students scored substantially below proficient on the SOL assessment, and we need to increase student engagement in learning. So the SMART goal then becomes, by October 2000, we'll increase the pass rate from this percentage to that percentage, our reality to where we want to go, of algebra students passing the standards of learning. Now, we're not going to have you write a sample SMART goal based on your area of focus, but you can already be thinking about that, right? What's the area of focus? What potentially could be areas of focus within your school, within the schools you work with as a division leader or as a coach? So be thinking about that. How would you come up with that SMART goal statement? And then we begin to think about how you would achieve it. So our resources also include checklists. And these checklists will help you as you write your comprehensive school improvement plan. Once you have that plan, you go back to the checklist to really see, are we doing these things? Do we include identified priority areas of focus determined by the results of our CNA? Do we include goals that are specific, measurable, achievable? I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but if you're having challenges and you're getting no's, then you want to go back through the process and re-examine. So setting up those priority areas, then having a SMART goal is then what is going to lead you to the next stage of the process, which is developing essential actions. And I'll let Rebecca, my co-host, take it from here.
All right, thank you, Mike. So phase 3, right? So you've got your area of focus, you've got your SMART goal, that outcome you want students to reach. Now we've got the essential actions. And a lot of you commented that essential actions you thought were most important. So some things to consider with essential action, right? You're investigating potential actions that will address priorities and promote achievement of SMART goals, right? So back to that SMART goal, that's the goal we want to get to. How are we going to get there? Select actions with evidence of effectiveness based on empirical studies and state or federal policy guidance. And again, that third one, address the root cause, right? So you've done that CNA, you've identified your priority areas, you know the outcome you want to get to. What's the causes, right? Those root causes that we can address within our essential action. Okay. So as you're determining essential actions, right, we said they're going to address the SMART goal. They're going to have actionable words that turn strategies for desired improvement into a direct functional practice. So you're thinking about the strategies you want to implement. And they could be, like Mike mentioned before, they could be strategies you've already done that you just need to tweak a little bit, right? Or they could be strategies that are working that you need to expand to more students in your building. So they don't always have to be brand new strategies, right? But considering where you are and what your next steps are. And then you have your action verbs, right? They're essential actions. So plan, develop, provide, implement, monitor, right? What actions are you going to do? And a lot of times in essential actions, you include multiple action verbs, right? You're going to make a plan, you're going to implement the plan and monitor the plan. And essential actions can be written in a variety of ways, right? There's not one specific template of the way you have to write them. And they can include different focus areas, right? So you might have a SMART goal based on reading achievement, right? That could be your SMART goal, but then you might have one essential action that addresses kind of tier 1 instruction. What are we going to do for all students to support reading achievement? But then you might also have an essential action that's focused on a particular student group, right? From your CNA, your data might have shown you have a particular student group that needs an additional intervention or attention and focus. So you can have more than one essential action that's reaching towards that same SMART goal. Okay, and you could also be based on content area, right? If your SMART goal is focused on an all, right, you might have an essential action for math and for science, right? So it depends on how you wrote those SMART goals and what strategies you're going to be implementing and who the target group is for those strategies. And you can use your evidence-based intervention, could be an essential action or an action step. Okay, so if we look at that template again, right, we've got that area focus, we've got your SMART goal, the outcome you're trying to reach for your students, and then the essential action is the how, right? How are you going to reach that SMART goal? What are you going to put in place? What strategies are you going to use? Research-based strategy, evidence-based intervention, what are you going to do? Okay. We have a couple examples here of some essential actions for you to take a look at. Again, these are just samples just to get you thinking about what you might use in your CSIP. And we've got plan, implement, and monitor. Again, those three verbs, right? Multiple things are happening in our essential action. Professional development for English teachers on aligning the written, taught, and tested curriculum to the standards of learning curriculum framework in content and cognition. Right, so as I'm thinking through this, I've got to come up with my plan for the professional development. Right, we're going to hold that professional development, we're going to implement it over time, and we're going to monitor it, right? How are we seeing the impact of that professional development in our classrooms and then in turn on student achievement, right? So you got to think through that whole kind of process of my goal is student achievement in reading, and I'm going to have this PD for teachers. How is that PD for teachers? How am I going to be able to show that impact on student achievement? Okay. Another potential essential action, again, just samples, implement and monitor a process to review and provide feedback on English lesson plans to ensure lessons and lesson delivery are aligned to the cognitive level of the standard. Okay, so maybe that's your focus, is we need to be supporting our teachers with more feedback to ensure that everything is aligned. So if that's your essential action, right? You got to implement that plan, monitor it. When are you providing that feedback? How often are you reviewing the feedback? And are you seeing changes in future lessons and lesson delivery, right? And in turn, are those changes having an impact on student outcomes? Okay, number 3, provide opportunities for students to learn about college careers and workplace skills, qualities, and behaviors. Utilize community partners to support learning opportunities. And then the last one, use diagnostic information and student learning data to develop differentiated lessons to address students' knowledge and skill gaps while providing grade level appropriate skills. And that one really seems to me, as far as we're returning to school, having been in a school during the pandemic, and now when students are returning this fall, how are we going to really diagnose exactly where they are, where they have some unfinished learning, what that data shows us, what in differentiation we need to provide, because we're going to have students at a variety of levels while addressing those skill gaps and keeping them learning on grade level. So that could be a potential essential action with a variety of steps you would need to implement that. So once you know like your strategy, right, kind of your big picture essential action that you're going to use, then it's time to start writing those action steps. Okay, and the action steps are very specific little details, right? And action steps refers to the specific efforts outlined in chronological order. So what are you going to do first? What are you going to do second? What are you going to do third? Thinking about that sequence of events that, when implemented, will address the essential action and meet the SMART goal, right? So it's all going back to that SMART goal. So I've got the SMART goal that I want to achieve for outcomes. I've got the strategy I'm going to implement in my essential action. Now I'm detailing and listing out exactly what I'm going to do to implement that strategy to have an impact on student achievement and meet my SMART goal. Action steps should be concrete, comprehensive, and should start with an action verb, right? So you really got to think about all angles of it. You're not just going to hold the PD session, right? But once you hold that PD session, how are we going to know that it's having an impact in classrooms and on students? How are we monitoring? What are other steps in there after that PD to continue the professional learning beyond just one session? An action step should explain what will occur, right? So if we look at that template again, you've got your area of focus, right? You've got your SMART goal, your essential action, and then those action steps, right? And on the template here, there's 5. Of course, you may have more than 5 action steps for a potential essential action, right? So you would just add as needed to fill in whatever action steps you needed. They're the specific steps you're going to take. Okay. All right, so then we're going to look at things to consider when you're writing your action steps, right? Of course, what does your essential action say? That's your strategy you're going to implement. What does that say? What are the components of that? And then your step-by-step plan to put into motion, right? You can have the best essential action in the world, but if we're not going to do those steps and start that motion of moving forward, we're not going to reach our intended outcomes. When you're doing action steps, also think about the resources, professional development and timeline, right? So do you need to purchase a specific set of resources for the classroom? Do the teachers need professional development, right? And then that timeline of when each of those will occur, thinking about that chronological order. Okay, when will each of those occur? And also what kind of benchmarks are you going to have within there, right? So if you do that professional development once, when are you then circling back to discuss it in PLC meetings? When are you then circling back to observe it in walkthroughs, right? So kind of what are those benchmark action steps along the way? Then you'll designate, right, the specific individuals or groups responsible for tasks related to implementation and tasks related to monitoring, right? So who is doing the work, right? Who is doing that action step, right? If it's a potential strategy that you're using, the teachers are implementing that strategy, right? So they would be listed as the person responsible for implementation, but then who's going to monitor that that strategy is implemented, right? So that could be your administrator. Okay, so thinking about who's implementing and who's monitoring, right? We don't want the same person to be noted for both, right? For accountability purposes, it's good to have that checks and balances. If you're going to do this, and then I'll follow up to make sure it's done, right? In the parameters we outlined together. And also when we designate that person, we do want to use their job title, right? We would recommend job title and not the name of the person. Of course, people move, things change. And this is a multi-year plan. So you want the plan to live on even if one person leaves your building. Okay. And then that last bullet says develop a timeline for implementation, including multi-year planning, multi-year targets, and key milestones, right? So you might have some big dreams for where you want that student achievement to go, but you might need to have some incremental steps along the way. So what are those targets you're going to hit and when? When are you going to look at the data, right? Your timeline should not say August to May without any breaks in between to stop and have conversations on what are we meeting our implementation? Are things working? What does the data show us at this point, right? Are we pulling data quarterly? Are we pulling data every other week? When are we looking at data to see, are our strategies having an impact? Are we making progress? We're not going to reach our SMART goal overnight, but are we seeing improvements towards our SMART goal in student achievement? So thinking about those benchmark milestones and including those in the plan so everybody knows up front, okay, we're going to meet again on this date and we're going to pull this data and we're going to look at it and see where we are. And so we can have time to make corrections if needed. Okay, and we have a few example action steps for you here, just things to consider. Again, these are just sample ideas that you might be brewing in your mind of what to include by analyzing data, assessment data, conducting observations, right? So if we say, oh yeah, we need to observe that that PD is taking place, well, when are you going to have those observations? What's that schedule going to look like? Provide evidence-based feedback to teachers on lessons observed in a timely manner. So if that's your goal, like we know, oh, we need to provide more feedback to teachers so they can make sure that everything is aligned. When are you going to do that? What's the timeline? Maybe it's more about adjusting your schedule, right? Maybe you don't have time in your schedule. So that might be an action step, creating a schedule where you can attend PLC or planning meetings. Reviewing common formative assessments, right? Before they're even given to ensure they're aligned. So maybe you task the team is going to, your PLC is going to review those assessments, make sure everything is aligned, their instructions aligned to those assessments that are aligned to the standards before we give them to students. And the last one there, develop a master schedule to allow for intervention enrichment time. So if that's an area of focus for you, some student groups that might need additional attention, where is that going to happen within your day, right? So an action step might be creating a different schedule that will work to implement these strategies. that you've identified. Then the last thing on the template, when we look at our action steps, so here's just a sample template here, right? So it has an area of focus, academic achievement and reading. It's got our SMART goal, the same example Mike had shared earlier. By October, we'll increase the percentage of English learners passing the SLL assessment. Right, we picked just an essential action just for an example here. Develop, implement, and monitor a process for explicit and systematic aligned instruction for all students in all content areas. And then you can see we listed just some potential action steps, right? So as you're thinking through your action steps, you're identifying who's responsible for implementing, what that timeline is going to be, who's going to monitor, when are we going to monitor? You're thinking through all of those things as your team. You also want to look at that middle column, evidence selected to measure progress. So what artifacts are you going to look at and when to know that you're making progress towards your SMART goal? Okay, so it could be qualitative data, it could be quantitative data, right? It could be anything that's observable. And you want to think here too about quality over quantity. You don't need to list 800 artifacts, right? But finding the best artifacts that are comprehensive, that show for that person that you communicated the plan, right? So what's the clear way that you can demonstrate you've communicated the plan and you've completed that action step? If you're looking at data, right, student data, what data are you going to look at and when, right? And who's that person responsible for pulling the reports and who's that team responsible for having conversations and actually reviewing the data, right? So we don't want to just list a bunch of stuff, but we want to really think through who, what, when, and that evidence that you're going to use to show progress. Okay, so that middle column sometimes gets overlooked. That's a really important thing about how am I going to prove that I've done this? And then we can check it off the list. We've met that action step and we're working on the next one. Okay. And so then the last thing, you've written this great plan, you've developed your focus areas, you've got clear SMART goals, you've got your essential actions and your strategies you're going to use to reach those SMART goals, and you've broken down all those steps, then you implement, right? And within that implementation, you've got those checkpoints where you're going to collect and review, right? As you're working, you're not waiting until June or May or June to collect and review. You're doing that throughout the course of the year. You're going to have maybe a schedule when you're going to meet, right, to talk about course corrections. If you have implemented a strategy and you're reviewing that data and you're not seeing any changes, right, you're not seeing any improvements, maybe we need to tweak the strategy, right? Maybe we need to go back and revisit how we implemented it to fidelity, right? Maybe in some classrooms you're seeing improvements, in other classrooms you're not, so that's a different conversation. What's happening here that we need to replicate in this other environment? So you need to have time built in to do that. Otherwise, time will just get away from you, right? So you want to have that in your plan. When are you going to have those conversations about making revisions, right? The plan can change throughout the year, right? And into next year. It's a living, breathing document. So you can change as needed as you're seeing progress and as you're seeing results, okay? And then also, when we talk about implementation and monitoring, we go back to that accountability, right? Who is that person responsible? Holding them accountable. Everybody in the building knows these are our SMART goals. These are the steps we're taking to reach those SMART goals. And as a teacher, I know these are the things I'm responsible for to help my school, right? To help our students. So making sure that that's shared across the board and everybody's accountable for their pieces of the plan so we can reach our goals. And then as you're thinking through implementation, monitoring, the whole plan creation, this whole process of school improvement, right? It always goes back to making sure those stakeholders are involved, right? Every step of the way, they know what's happening in your building. Your stakeholders in central office, as well as your community members, know these are our goals for the year. These are the strategies we're using with students. When your students come home, talk to them about these reading strategies we're implementing in class. Talk to them about what they're learning. And what changes they might see. So people should know what's happening in your building and your goals and your plans, and that they're accessible and understandable, right, to everyone. So just keeping in mind that how are we involving our stakeholders beyond just our CSIP team, to our whole school community, to our division, to our community members and parents. All right, so we've gone through the 5 phases. We do want to share with you a few additional resources. And like Mike shared, this whole slideshow will be shared with you probably tomorrow. So you'll have all these notes. And so we're just going to talk through a couple additional resources. One is the Hexagon tool. Okay, so this Hexagon tool is just a way to kind of evaluate what you're doing, right? So you've got there you got your needs. Is the strategy you're implementing a good fit, right? As you're talking about what essential action you might implement or evidence-based intervention, do you have the resources needed? What does the evidence show us about the strategy? What's the research tell us? Are we ready? Okay, and do we have the capacity within our building? So just this is another resource, not required, but a way to kind of help you make decisions when you're trying to determine what evidence-based intervention or what strategy you want to use for your essential action. This might help guide that conversation. Okay, we also have a rubric that would help you kind of like self-assess, right, your CSIP. So you've been working on your CSIP, your team's been meeting, you've written out, you've got focus areas, SMART goals, essential actions, action steps. You feel like everything's there. You can use this rubric. This is just one little picture of it. We'll share the whole thing with you to kind of assess yourself, right? Do you have all these things? Are you meeting the expectations? Are there areas where you need to add additional information to your CSIP, or is it good to go? So this is a resource to kind of help you guide your work, right? We do for students, you kind of check where you are. It's a progress check. Am I in a good spot with my CSIP, or do I need to make some adjustments? Okay. And then we've got the process, right? So you went through all 5 phases, priority areas, your SMART goals, essential actions, action steps, and then that connection to implementation and monitoring, which is module 4. So this is module 3, right? We're doing an overview today of just the CSIP process. And module 4 will be next month, and that'll be about implementing and monitoring your CSIP. What can you do in your building to make sure you're implementing and monitoring, and what strategies might you use to help along that work when it's time to do that? So that'll be an upcoming event for you. And as we're there, just take a minute and look at that reflection question, right? So you're processing all this information that's been shared. What are you going to take back? So the question says, describe 2 things you may do differently, but just think for a moment, personal reflection. What are you going to take from today's training? Quick overview, right? What pieces and parts can you take back and use to help your team with the development of your CSIP? Okay, so just self-reflection there. All right, so then we want to talk about a few available resources. Right, so like I said, we'll share with you this whole slideshow, right? And we'll share with you the module, right, which has the checklist. So Mike showed you one sample of the checklist. There's a checklist for each phase. That's a good way to see where you are. You're saying yes to each one of those. There's the rubric, which I showed you. There's the template, right? So using the template, you can use our template. If your division has a template they want you to use, that's fine also. There'll be some sample template there, the Hexagon tool, and some example strategies. So we'll share that information with you. And so as you're thinking through, this was just an overview, right? A very quick splash of all those phases and all those resources. We are also here to help you really dig in deeper, right? So you can, division leadership can request an appointment with us, which would be just a planning session to talk about how the Office of School Quality can partner with you to dig in deeper. Okay, we have done the CSIP training, the 3-hour CSIP training with the several divisions. And in that training, when we went and worked with those divisions, we were able to really hone in on their specific focus areas, right? And provide time for them to work on potential SMART goals and action steps and things. So we had time for that feedback and conversation and some activities, okay, to help with that. So if you're interested in more on the CSIP, of course, talk to your OSP contact, or send in an appointment slot request here so we can talk to you about what we could offer, what that might look like, what would be best helpful for your division. Right? If none of those times work for you, of course, just send us an email, right? And we will find a time that fits your schedule where we can check in and touch base on what your needs are. And then we can modify the training to fit your specific priority areas that you're focusing on in your. Okay. We also have a new feature we wanted to share with you. We are starting this month, August 19th, quality time is what we're calling it. And it really is an office hours time. So if you have just a few questions today or over the next few days that you're like, I just want clarification on something they said, or I'm not sure about this one part, you can sign up for just a 15-minute appointment with us, right? It'll be quick. You bring what you want to ask. And so we are prepared. We can answer those questions for you. There's a link there. And it's just August 19th from 8:30 to 10. And this will be something that'll be recurring every month. So every third Thursday of the month, we're going to have this open office hours time where we're available for whatever you might need, right? To answer questions and guide you in the right direction or clarify anything for you, that personal support, since we're walking hand in hand to support you. So the link is there. Feel free to sign up for that. Then we already mentioned our upcoming events. So we do have an implementation and monitoring of the CSIP. So that's module 4. So another 1-hour overview of module 4 coming up September 9th, and an evidence-based intervention webinar coming up October 7th. So those are upcoming, just 1-hour overviews, right? If you want to dig in deeper, we're happy to do that with you also. And you can see our email addresses there. So if you have any questions after today's presentation, please reach out. We can answer it. We'll get you the right person who can help you along the way. Okay, and then we do have the quick takes also. So it's our last little plug here for OSQ support. We do have a monthly email that goes out just once a month. So it's not filling your inbox with too many things. That is a quick take document. So the link is there if you were interested in signing up to receive those emails. They cover, there's a research brief, there's information from our director, Dr. Ortiz, there's information about upcoming events, registration links, the links for quality time will be there, information about other things going on in the agency. So it's just a good overview of things happening within OSQ and resources that could help your work as you're thinking about school improvement and you're thinking about that CSIP and setting those goals for the year and your next steps. Okay, so that link is there. And again, if you didn't catch any of these links, no worries. We'll send you the slideshow. You'll have all the links you need so you can go back and sign up for whatever is needed. I saw in chat a question about the registration for the upcoming webinars. That will be in the quick take that's coming. The registration links haven't been sent out yet. So if you sign up for the quick takes, you'll get that registration link. Or just shoot us an email and someone will get back to you with the registration for the upcoming webinars. Okay. And then our last thing here is the feedback survey. We're always looking to hear from you about what we could do to serve you better. So if you would take a moment and just fill this out regarding today's session, we'd really appreciate it. And then feel free to pop any questions in chat you have about the CSIP, about the process, about support, anything that you might need help with. Please pop any questions in chat so we can try and answer those for you. Okay. I don't see any questions yet. So once you've done the survey, please don't leave to answer that survey. Once you've done the survey, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that this was a quick, good overview for you. We're ready to help you with more. Just let us know what you need. And again, have a great day. Thank you for coming. And we'll stay on the line. So if you do have any questions, you're welcome to ask right now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. It's a privilege to work with you and help support your efforts in school improvement. So thank you so much.
Have a great day. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions, just let us know, shoot us an email, I can pop them in chat.